It's time for another Tucson Means Business, where you get to meet the best Tucson entrepreneurs and those leaders in the community with a story to tell. Tucson Means Business. And now your host, Mark Bishop. Yes, and it's that time again to enjoy another Tucson Means Business. And what we endeavor to do with this show is bring in all sorts of leaders in our community that have done and are doing a wonderful job for Tucson and surrounds by way of what they do in their work world and how they help and support others. My guest today is Dan Gibson. He's the Director of Communications for Visit Tucson and primarily overseeing domestic, culinary, and local media efforts. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I also have Devin Brown. Devin's a branch manager of the Great Western Bank. And he's along today. He's a local graduate from Rincon Uni High School, lettering in football and track and field. We won't hold that against you, mate.
Yeah, right?
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
All righty. And an icon of this city, CEO of his company and president of Film Creations Limited. Rick was born in New York City but grew up in suburban New York. Following graduation from the University of Denver's film program, he was invited to join the prestigious Directors Guild of America in L.A. And here he is in little old Tucson, where he's been for many, many years, haven't you, mate?
Man, happy to be here.
Yeah, lovely to have you. How does one go from New York to Denver, Rick? Tell me.
It was, I believe, United Airlines. Sorry. No.
You didn't fly yourself. Fair enough. Okay.
No, I walked through the living room one time when my sisters were looking at a presentation for a thing called Camp Adventure that was a cross-country trip, and I saw some pictures of Colorado that they were projecting, trying to get my sisters to sign up. And I said, I have no idea where that is, but I think I want to go to school there. So I tried to find a school there, one that would accept me, and son of a gun, University of Denver stepped up.
That's very good. Very good. Now, although this invitation to join the prestigious Directors Guild of America that I talked about represented a tremendous opportunity for you, it required working in a highly structured union environment, apparently, which you reluctantly declined the offer. What was behind that?
Well, I went out to L.A. for about a week to try to find a place to live and sort of get settled in. It was part of the internship program at DGA, which led into becoming a member. And after about 3 or 4 days there, I just really couldn't get acclimated to living in Southern California. The traffic was so bad. I could see a place I wanted to go across the street, but you'd have to take the interstate to get there. And so I went to the head of the guild, it was Robert Aldrich at the time, and just said, I really appreciate the honor, but if I have one life to live, it can't be here doing this.
Right. And that's when you made your mind up.
Yeah.
Let's go to the summer of 76. You headed towards Tucson, where you had previously filmed the Tucson radio for NBC.
Right.
And something marvelous was about to happen to you.
Well, yeah, we actually got lost. They sent me down with 2 days' worth of film and a 4-day plane ticket. So I had 2 days. My girlfriend, who later became my wife, came down too, and we just tripped around, looked at the place. We were looking for a place to settle, and the full moon came up over one set of hills, and the big red sun went down over the other. And
right.
The sky was every color from red to black, and we just said, I don't know where we are, but we're going to live here.
Probably shouldn't show you other places ever. Just evocative photos of things.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll just end up there.
Yeah,
You're like, where is that? New Zealand? Let's go.
Well, Rick, within a short period of time, you were appointed by Mayor Lou Murphy as vice chairman of the Tucson Film Commission. And I wonder, okay, how did you get this so quickly? And under the old Tucson Studios founder, Bob Shelton, and he remains the youngest member ever appointed to the commission, I believe.
Right. Back then, the commission was a quasi-governmental thing made up of people that were actually in the industry, and we used our own money. There was very little city money involved to go out and try to bring productions in. This is during the heyday of old Tucson. And it was a great honor. I mean, I was one of the few people in town actually doing production at that time other than the TV stations. There was a guy named Mark Headley, Castle Films, but that was about the only guy doing this in town.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed to me that there was a need here, so I took a job with KOLD, CBS affiliate here.
Right.
And worked there for about 6 months to kind of get a feel for what the town was about, who the players were, what the market was like. And even though it was one of those things that everybody told me it couldn't be done, I knew if somebody tells you something can't be done, I got to do it.
You're right.
Hard-headed, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Good on you. Well, those we're going to come back and touch on those days a little later because they must have been heady days in Tucson. I often hear about how wonderful the film industry was here, what really went on. John Wayne's, one of my favorites, one of his hangouts, and lots of other big names as well.
Yep.
Devin, let's go to you.
Yeah,
the exciting and happy subject of banking.
Right?
Yeah.
Every day.
The Great Western Bank. Who are they? Tell me about them.
So Great Western Bank, I mean, we're a regional bank based out of South Dakota. We've been around for a little over 80 years now with a very laid back kind of vibe, right? As we understand is that people come first amongst anything. And what that does is going to allow us to, maintain what you want as a customer, as a person.
Right.
As business is always going to be there.
So very much one-to-one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And, we always stay resourceful, make sure that you can get a hold of who you need to get a hold of.
Right.
Right.
What a concept.
Well, you're right. Yeah. You deal with people, there's buildings and, artificial intelligence, all that everywhere, but people are what run this place. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to when, you were at college and so on. I mean, you accepted a football scholarship to Arizona Western College, but more recently receiving a degree from Grand Canyon University with a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. So that set you on your way.
Absolutely.
And you previously worked in sports medicine before transitioning into banking as a teller in the very, very beginning. What, no future in sports medicine?
Yeah, you got to be very, very specific, and it's I would have loved to be, part of a the Golden State Warriors, Phoenix Suns, something to that effect, and be on their staff. But that's a long road to get to. Yeah.
Maybe not the Suns.
Not this year.
The gig might be available just if you.
Hey, if I ever want to change, I guess that's where I would look at, right?
Right. So what was the goal when you started as a lead teller? To strive for a manager's position?
And my old supervisors, and even now, is they hate that, considering the fact that I really didn't have a goal, right? For the most part, I kind of just kept working on what I had in front of me. And as long as I was good at it and I liked and enjoyed what I was doing, I was going to take that road. So more than anything is, you put it on my plate and I'm going to take off with it and, see where it lands me.
That's the way. Yeah. That's the way. It's a good attitude to have. Don't forget, we have a lot of aspiring young people also listen to our show, and they take a lot of hints and advice, from our guests. A lot of them have done it the hard way.
Yeah.
So that's the only way, to actually do it. You held positions such as a lead teller, then a personal banker, an assistant manager before making the bank manager.
Yep. Married
with a couple of kids. Do you have your thoughts regarding success, how to get to success?
In all honesty, failing. And that sounds really bad, but, is you don't know how successful you will be until you step outside your box, right?
Outside the compass square.
That must be very successful then.
I've taken my hits, I've taken my blows, but you know what? What did they say? The best comeback is come from, failing or losing what you had, and so to me, it's a big deal to fail, as long as you learn from it and you grow from it. So failing isn't always necessarily a negative thing to me. It's,
right.
It's a place of growth. It allows you to kind of move forward with what you want to do next.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you believe that strong relationships that have longevity are the foundation to the development of the next generation. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. I have some unintentional mentors, and with that, what's become of it is that you learn so much about it, and being able to have those relationships, a casual conversation turns into a lesson. I don't have to schedule a time like a doctor and say, hey, I need to speak about something. We'll go and, we'll go to dinner, have a barbecue, and, start chatting things up. And you start to kind of develop, some thought processes, and they open your eyes from a different perspective. So I think that allows me, and anybody for that matter, to kind of, reach out and see what you can learn from anybody that you come across.
Okay. Now, the Great Western Bank, it's a regional financial services company focused on business and agribusiness banking, right? Not angry, but agri. But sometimes my pronunciations as an Aussie can be misconstrued.
That's all right.
How is the firm doing these days? Are you ahead of the game?
Absolutely. And especially being in Tucson, is our goal has been to be literally in the mix of everything. So anything from new construction to hospitality to new business development, whatever it is, we want to kind of dabble in it because, kind of as I said before, as you start to learn things and you learn what people want and need, Plus, it gives us a vision of where Tucson's going to be and what Tucson needs in general. So then we can kind of help guide and build that structure of how Tucson grows.
All right, we're going to come back on that because there's some exciting things that you are doing. But I love the way your firm thinks in relation to doing business, which is a little different from a lot of banks out there. This fella, he doesn't think at all. Dan Gibson, it just happens
often.
for him.
It's all knack.
It's just ad lib he does.
Who is that now?
He's got a great job. I love his job as the Director of Communications for Visit Tucson, primarily overseeing domestic, culinary, and local media efforts. Correct?
That's true. That got me here at very least. Local, media efforts. I made it to the show.
So share with us, Dan, what a day may look like in the world of Dan Gibson. On paper, it looks terrific.
Yeah, sure. No, it can be. No, it's an interesting job. I mean, I came from journalism, and so the sort of great nightmare of leaving journalism, I think, for most journalists is this idea that you're going to end up in PR and that you're going to be like writing a press release for gum or something. It's the most transcendent gum ever. New flavors, things like that. So when the opportunity came up to work at Visit Tucson and to really tell a story about Tucson, which was sort of what I was doing before, it's a great opportunity to talk about people who are doing interesting things in this town, unlike you here, Mark. It's like to find people whose work deserves to be amplified, to try to share that with media, with travel journalists, food journalists, meetings journalists, whatever it is. So
that's a good thing because, you're part of the whole new movement of, who is Tucson? Where the heck are we? And why should we even come here? You know what I mean? It's on. Your role, we did touch on this before, the position was editor of the Tucson Weekly.
It's true.
Paper.
I did do that. Yeah, I was digital editor before that.
Yeah. How did you try to convey, what was your biggest challenge there, would you think, when you were doing that role?
At the Weekly? That's an interesting question. I think, just the media landscape changing so much was what was sort of problematic about it. I think, it was funny because I would talk to people and they were like, oh man, I really missed the golden age of the Weekly. And I was like, I would have enjoyed being the editor then too, because it was just everyone's trying to figure out that space of how do we create content and balance it against an ad landscape where people just don't want to buy ads. People look at a print ad and they're like, well, I could buy my nephew can help me buy Facebook ads, or fill in the blank, right? Or I bought a Google display ad. So people don't necessarily feel like those print ads are compelling. And so it's like, how do you still put out a paper that people want to read, but also balance that against the sort of challenges of selling ads?
Today,
it's a common. Anybody in media always just like you start talking about that stuff, like, well, how is this working now? And people just you can see like the sort of color leave their face.
It almost changes on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh yeah, so ads.
That's still
let's make it easier for you.
Yeah,
you're a music journalist, for God's sake, for Apple Music.
I did do that. Yeah.
What do you know about music?
Great question. Hard to say. No, I mean, I worked in record stores here in town for a long time. I was not so smart about how I did college. If you want lessons on mistakes and failing, I dropped out of school to work in the music business. I had a really good knack for this. Like, I went to work for Warner Music Group in 2000, right? It's like Napster and all these things were hitting. So, it's like you're watching the business crumble. Right. So then I moved to music journalism, where you're watching the business crumble around you.
Right.
But PR seems solid. Tourism, still good.
Don't move into production.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. I do have that touch. We work with the film Tucson is in our building as well. So I already, if I'm ruining film in Tucson, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you might end. There's hope for you yet. Remember the fellow that he dropped out too, but it was a British uni, and he sold records and ended up owning an airline.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, could work for anybody. No, I mean, it was exciting. It was a great experience working in Apple. I made playlists for a living, so essentially I was writing like mixtapes, which when I was in high school, I was trying to impress girls with that, which wasn't working. But,
right.
Apple Music was great, so they're like, oh, hey, we want to make a playlist. It's like, what people would listen to at a tailgate for a NASCAR event.
Right.
Like, yeah,
very
sure, let's do
specific.
that. Oh, super specific. My favorite was Soccer Mom Chill Out.
Ooh, that's a thing. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're in your van, you picked up the kids from soccer practice, you just want to, just let the feelings happen for a little bit. There was a playlist for that, and I made it. So.
Well, there you go. Well, let's face it, there was one fellow, too. What's it called? Facebook, I think?
Also trying to pick up girls, yeah.
Right, Well, let's get to the food bit. You managed a bakery.
That's true. I did do that
previously. Yeah. I mean, did you think there was any connection with your culinary expertise later on in life, in your career?
Zero. No, no. I mean, I think it's helpful in what I do now to understand what it's like to work in a restaurant. I actually think it's a pretty useful life skill in general to have worked in a restaurant.
I think it is too. Yeah,
it does sort of put you at where the rubber meets the road of dealing with people and speed and getting things done. And so now so much of what we talk about is food. I mean, it just really is. When we talk about Tucson, you use the language of food. And so having that experience of talking to a restaurateur and saying, hey, listen, I get what you're doing here. I just need to bring in a journalist for this amount of time. Or, hey, if you could stop by the table, to sort of make that connection between. I think what's been really good for me and my sort of accidental career is having done a lot of things, some successfully, some not so much. Is that...
But you've lived.
Yeah, I'm still here. My son is graduating from high school this week, so we got that far.
Very good.
So I win.
Yeah, exactly. So far, so good. So I mean, it's having that context of when I talk to journalists, I know their language, right? I'm I get the pressures of it. I know how to frame a story. Working with local businesses, I've done a lot of weird things, and so usually I could be like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to wait for a delivery or to try to figure out what to sell that week or the product, things like that. So
that's good.
Wildly accidental.
Well,
success.
talking on doing different things, because I'm a great believer of people who've done things in their life. I mean, you go from one thing to another, but you learn something from each one. But a graphic designer for publications, including California Tomato Grower.
Oh, it's scintillating.
That's exciting stuff. Yeah, exactly. And Mini Storage Messenger.
Oh, yeah. There's a local printer in town, Sundance Press, and Lord knows what they print now, but at the time it was mostly trade publications. And in this weird sort of connection, I deeply love trade publications because they're so weirdly niche that, you learn a lot about that particular industry. Right. And so we were printing Duck Decoy Monthly. There was one about a particular type of Portuguese water dog quarterly. But Mini Storage Messengers, what at the time was this really thick publication and just super in depth about states where they require you to live on the property. So now that is something I know about mini storage places is that in Arizona, you have to have someone live at the mini storage place. And so there's little apartments attached to every mini storage place.
That's right. Yes.
You can look for the satellite dish usually. There's a little DirecTV thing.
Yeah.
So that's not useful in that piece of information is no good except for this conversation.
Here's the big one. Folks. A 3-time, not once, but a 3-time game show contestant. And his trivia team can be found on Instagram at Sparkle Motion Information Club. Is that right?
Yeah, this is absolutely the first time anybody's actually read that bio. So this is helpful. Usually it never comes up, and I just hand it to people. I'm all of it's true. But I had a run when I lived in Los Angeles as the music business was crumbling down around me. I was I'm going to become a semi-professional game show contestant. And so I was going on shows again, successfully and unsuccessfully, just trying to make enough money to live in Los Angeles, which
it's not easy from the sound.
It's not a good. None of that was a good plan.
Give us an idea. What sort of game shows? I mean, you're not an idiot, but I mean, you're not a Harvard professor either.
No, neither. No. So I was the first one I was on was Rock and Roll Jeopardy, which VH1, the cable channel, had a knockoff, or it wasn't a knockoff. It was made by the people who made Jeopardy, but it was hosted by the guy Jeff Probst, the guy who hosts Survivor, and they only ask questions, same show, except they only ask questions about music, and that I won, so that was nice, $15,000.
Whoa!
Yeah, I know.
Your phone bill in those days.
Yeah, right, exactly. My son was born the same month that aired, so it was it was all gone. And I was on a show called The Chair, which is super forgettable. It was only on for 4 episodes. It got canceled before my episode aired, which was fine because I didn't win. But the idea was you sat in a chair, hence the title, and you were asked trivia questions by John McEnroe. And they did things to sort of elevate your heart rate to scare you while you were answering the trivia questions. And if your heart rate went over a certain mark, then you lost your money.
Good Lord.
And I was I can answer these questions, but it was really dumb. And they had you run to the stage. It was the whole premise was bad.
Sounds like they were trying to kill you.
Basically, they did throw roaches on me.
Oh my God.
And then I flicked one of the roaches away, and then this is the most LA
this is
story.
way ahead of Survivor then.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I flicked one of the roaches, and like the animal guy is like, you can't do that to the roaches.
It's a Union Roach.
Yeah, it was a Union Roach. Like, I was like, what? No, you threw roaches at me. So I said some terribly mean things about John McEnroe and kind of hurt his feelings, and that was the only thing I got out of that show.
Well, you leap over the net and beat you with a hat.
Yeah, I know. He like, it was so funny because he's like, that's not fair. And I'm like, I was realizing I wasn't going to win any money at this point. So
you ought to talk stuff.
Might as well have fun with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I got an autographed tennis ball out of it and a lunch. Cool. I think it was a lunch.
There you go. Well, better than a kick in the teeth, let's face it.
It wasn't that great of a lunch.
Well, Devin Brown, you're headquartered in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, this bank you work for. Why in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, of all places? Is that where it started, or...?
Yes and no. I mean, in Sioux Falls, it's just kind of, I mean, and bear with me, I've been here 2 years, so I'm still learning the history as we go along.
Okay.
And it's always a good history to find out. But I mean, it's a nice, good, I guess, homey feel is what it is.
Okay.
So staying, not to bag on any of these other institutions, but it's a very good personable culture that we've developed. And Sioux Falls was just where, it kind of niched and it worked out. And so it was slowly spreading out from there. And it seemed to work really well, apparently. So, I mean, all the way out here in Tucson, it's been, we've been out here for, I want to say 10 to 12 years now. And it's been a really decent run.
Well, you're doing well. That idea of being family-oriented and one-on-one, customer-focused culture, it's usually associated with smaller banks.
Yes.
But you rank 6th largest in the U.S. for farm lending. Have you had a good run with that, do you think? I mean... Yeah,
and that goes back to our kind of our thought process, right? So if you think about farmers and ranchers, you're up early, you got to take care of your crops and your goods, and you can't rush things, right? You rush them, you get bad products. You get bad products, your clients fall because they don't like what you're doing anymore. So we kind of do the same thing. We make sure that, things are done on time, they're done efficiently, and you get what you're expecting out of it. We're not just going to be order takers. We're professionals, and we want to make sure we give you what's best for you.
Right.
I mean, for instance, we've even thrown some satellite offices, if you will, out in Yuma. My good old stomping grounds, Arizona Western College out there, right? Surrounded by farmland.
Right.
So a very good place to be where you have a successful agricultural company or agricultural institution. That's a very good spot to get into, and they've been nonstop since we put them out there. So, we took a chance and threw a couple guys out there, and it's been great ever since.
Well, there you go. 170 banking branches across 9 states.
And growing.
Yep. What would you say your mission is?
To bring back that customer service. Some places you think of like artificial intelligence and how ATMs are popping up everywhere. That's great and all for convenience-wise, but you still need people to run an organization. You still need people to understand what you're trying to do. You can go to the ATM and cry your heart out and tell them what your dreams and ambitions are. It's not going to tell you anything after that.
Right.
Do you want a receipt?
You know what my biggest test would be? If I was to ring your bank with all of... So far, you've sold me, all right?
Okay.
I would want to bank with you on everything I've heard.
Okay.
But if I rang up and tried to ring that bank and went through 77 turnoffs or which you go to for something else or something else without talking to somebody live, I think I'd give up straight away. It's driving people nuts.
It is. And and what's funny is I do these experiments when, if I do presentations, I go and have meetings with boards or what have you, things of that nature, is I'll ask somebody, hey, who's your banker? 90% of them will say bank of whomever, right? They don't give me a person's name. Right. Well, sometimes I kind of sneak in some of my own little spies in there and I'll say, hey, you call your banker right now and my phone will ring. Now, mind you, that's my personal cell phone. And that's how our team operates is I'm supposed to be out and about trying to figure out how to make this city, how to make this community continue to be prosperous. If I'm not in the office, that doesn't mean you can't get a hold of me.
Well, not today anyway.
Right?
Phones,
He's ready.
I'm trying to behave and leave it aside right now.
He's been checking his phone.
That's it. Phone's all off before we record.
A resource, we want to be a resource too.
So that's what customer experience is. I mean, someone says to you, what is customer experience?
Absolutely. Customer experience is how I see it and how a lot of people see it is going above and beyond. You come in, you say, hey, I want to open up a checking account. That's great. Our conversation is going to open up some other ideas and some things that may have kind of left your brain for the moment, but I might spark that fire one last time and kind of strategically put you in a place that's going to better yourself. So not just saying, okay, I'm going to go A, B, and C, but I'm going to check out the rest of it and see what else I can do for you, just to make sure that I haven't left anything out.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the pluses and minuses of the digital era taking over banking?
That's tough because I am considered quote unquote a millennial. I don't like that.
Yeah, I know
brand.
the spoiled mob. Yes,
Right?
I understand.
Yeah. But
psychedelic relic.
You want,
exactly.
you want everything today,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's that entitlement feel. I did it. But the fact of the matter is I think there has to be a nice little melding of the two. Right? Is having the availability to, go on your phone and buy a car, buy stocks, foreign exchange trading, transfer money, pay your friends, whatever is great. But at the same time is that's all going to falter at some point, right? There's going to be digital glitches. There's going to be issues with technology. The fact of the matter is you still have to have something on the side to be able to still run and do what you need to do.
And banking is basically a person-to-person business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where it all starts.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
And if I buy something on there's certainly transactions on my phone that are great,
Right.
but if you don't, that assumes what's happening too, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no transaction like, I this loan is a good idea, or this borrowing money this way, or these investments. That assumes that I have all the pieces of information, which I don't.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's like you do go online and there's 15 questions that you're looking at that are generalizing what you want to do. For instance, I went to remortgage my home, and a gentleman called me from Michigan. And I'm thinking, what do you know about Arizona? You may be licensed in Arizona to do what I'm asking, but what do you actually know about the housing market and what's going on in Arizona? That didn't make me real comfortable.
No, because your feet aren't on the ground, so to speak.
Not to mention it, depending on your house, is I'm signing on a dotted line with someone I've never met face to face for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's really not something I want to do.
I know.
The computer's never going to tell you. Maybe did you think about this in the way? Or decline to sell you something, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly.
What were you thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just a heads up. Maybe you don't want to borrow this way.
Yeah, just because on paper it looks nice, but there's other outside factors that cannot be discussed over through the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Good fellows, good show. We're listening to Tucson Means Business on the Business Radio X, the Tucson Business Radio X network here in Tucson, Arizona. And proudly sponsored, by the way, by the 49ers Golf and Country Club, right here in beautiful Tucson, which is now a gorgeous course. It's come back from the dead, believe me, and it is beautiful, along with the whole new buildings out there for being able to have weddings, functions, all sorts of things. Officially sponsoring this show, Tucson Means Business, starting next week, but we thought we'd give them a plug today to say thank you so much for coming on board with us, and we do appreciate it. And of course, we're broadcasting live. We do live stream, but of course our focus is all on podcasting. And we do broadcast out of the Stewart Title Building. This is where our studio is on Broadway. No, not that Broadway, but the one in Tucson. But we might get there one day. Speaking of Broadway, Richard Rose, your film and television credits literally fill 3 pages, which I'm not going to try and do now. Thank God we don't have time. But let's have a look at some highlights in which include, and I wouldn't be surprised if these guys, maybe not the millennial.
Probably doesn't remember.
The Global Arena, a film on the Lake Placid Olympic Games.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what the message was.
Well, the Lake Placid Olympics was really the first Winter Olympics to be broadcast live worldwide. And AT&T was very heavily involved in technology at that time, broadcasting from the top of Whiteface Mountain. And I had originally signed up with the Lake Placid Organizing Committee to do official footage for them. After a couple of days, the people from AT&T, the producer, saw some of the stuff I had done and actually dragged me off my assignment and had me for the next 3 weeks doing footage of how the games were put together, the communication problems that they ran into, how they came up with solutions, because there were venues separated by 20, 30 miles sometimes, trying to get signals in the snow and ice up to the top of Whiteface Mountain. To get
some challenges there.
It was a pretty interesting thing. And the film actually won the silver medal at the New York International Film Festival.
Apparently so. Congrats on that, too, by the way. Yeah. Talk about tourism, eh? Homemade Tucson.
Really.
What about How Strong is the Wind? That was a documentary, the definitive documentary work on the Wright brothers.
Yep.
And The Human Experiment, the story of the visionary Biosphere 2 project.
I've been pretty lucky. One of these days, I want to write a book called Backstage at the World because, through my career, I've had an opportunity to do some really, really unusual things. The Biosphere project, I met my wife on that, actually.
Oh, really?
She was the artist that did all the renderings.
Oh, wow.
And we did several films. I was the official filmmaker for the Biosphere. They wouldn't just let anybody on there to shoot. They had to go through the Biosphere office, and then the Biosphere office would be in touch with them. So that was a very cool assignment. And How Strong Was the Wind? Boeing actually is still using that to train their first-year aeronautical engineers. It was a film not so much about the history of the Wright brothers, but how they accomplished what they did.
They're pretty amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's an amazing story. They not only did what they did, but they found the errors in other people's work that everybody else was working off of. Yeah, and changed the whole dynamic of the way people were building things.
I'm pretty sure most of you guys would know some of these I'm going to mention that Richard also worked on, like The Three Amigos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Law at Rondado.
Rondado, yeah.
Rondado. Yeah. The Cellar.
Ford.
Okay.
The Cellar and The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one? The Young Riders.
Yep.
Desperado, Portrait of America, Little House on the Prairie. Well, speaking of that, wasn't the young actor
Mike Lavin?
Wasn't he pretty well associated with Tucson?
Oh yeah, Mike was great. We did a lot of work with him. He came down and started a celebrity tennis tournament, as a matter of fact.
Oh, is that what it was?
Right.
Okay.
And he really loved Tucson. Matter of fact, he was down here the week he discovered he was ill. We were working together on some stuff, and he was a very, very nice man. Loved Tucson. And he's greatly missed because he brought a lot to the town.
Well, there you go. I thought he was great because I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And there you go. Now I end up living in the place where he used to frequent all the time. He was very popular, and the show was very popular in Australia. Huge ratings. Oh, yeah, my word. Now let's see if we can make you blush a little. Oh. In 2011, you were chosen as the Advertising Federation's Advertising's Person of the Year.
Yeah, I think they finally got down to the R's.
And in 2014, he was given the silver medal. In 2016, he was inducted into the Advertising Federation's Hall of Fame.
Which is a sure clue that my career is over.
Wow. All of this in the USA. Good on you, mate. What's your golf handicap these days, by the way?
I'm sorry?
What's your golf handicap?
Oh, my golf handicap? Boy, I think it's down to about a 14 right now.
There you go. Not too bad, huh?
And by the way, 49ers is a wonderful course. I'm playing there tomorrow.
It is.
Hey, there you go.
It is. It's, the restaurant out there is the Rincon Grill. People enjoy that. And, of course, there's lots of other beautiful rooms to hold weddings, showers, birthday parties. And they have the bingo. I mean, they're packing them out there now. 200 a night or something. Casey is comparing his bingo nights.
It's hard to find a parking
People
space
love that.
I'm here for it. I'm looking for a bingo place. And so.
Oh, there you go.
There you
49ers.
Go. The 49ers on Tuesday, or it's gone to Thursday. I'm not sure. We'll double check.
You might have to stay a whole week in there with all
the whole thing.
It's near my house. I'm here for it.
Hey, Dan, I got to know, why is tourism important to Tucson and to Arizona overall?
Well, a really good question. The main thing is that it's such a huge industry. I think people assume that the tourism just sort of naturally happens, and there are elements, obviously, like Tucson's this gorgeous place with a lot of assets, but, there is this constant need to sort of remind people that things are happening here. We don't functionally have a problem getting people to come back to Tucson. When we do visitor surveys, 80% of people say they are actively making plans to come back. But the problem is that people can go anywhere. You have this infinite amount of choices, even more so all the time. If you live in New York, the price of a ticket to come to Tucson is not all that much different than a price of a ticket to go to Paris. If you live in San Francisco or Los Angeles, tickets to Japan or Seoul or, there are different places with wildly different appeals and reasons to go. But in the end, when you look at the numbers of the economic impact of tourism, if you live in Pima County, $500 of your taxes are paid for every citizen of Pima County through tourism, through the direct impact of the taxation of tourism products. So, there's a real benefit there that means something. There's, there's $235 billion of direct travel spending within Pima County.
$235 billion?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's this sort of weird secret business, right? Because you don't see it you see it at the hotels and you think of the hotel business, but you
Right.
also, there's, people going to restaurants. When you're during the gem show, when we were at 98% occupancy of hotels, those people are buying things in stores. The Target is busier. The restaurants are clearly busier. You're trying to get a seat at a restaurant.
The roads are busier.
Yeah, I guess the roads are busier. And there's just all these like ancillary things. There are 6.5 million visitors. It's $756 million in salaries paid to people in tourism in Pima County. And so that money just keeps rolling around.
There's a lot of jobs in the industry.
And you're not necessarily, you are building things, but it doesn't have the same sort of economic needs that, hey, company X is moving here, which I'm totally for as well. But, you're having to build roads to get to the place, and the infrastructure and all these things. All that stuff a positive too. But by and large, tourist plus one doesn't cost the city all that much, but it has the benefit that just keeps rolling.
Well, I was going to ask you, how are the effects of tourism tracked in the first place?
The main thing is this is where it gets super wonky. So my apologies if you want to look at something on your phone while I'm explaining this part. It's totally fine. No, the main number is this thing called RevPAR. It's revenue per available room. So the idea is that there's a hotel room, let's say the DoubleTree right down the street. They have so many rooms. How much money is each room making per night? Now, whether that room is full, whether you gave it away at half price, whether you paid twice what they were supposed to, that's the main number. And so, since 2012, which is, the beginning of coming out of the recession for Tucson, we've had a 66% increase in that revenue per available room. Wow. So in the first quarter of 2019, RevPAR went up 7.1% over the previous the first quarter of 2018 to $109, essentially $109 per room per night is what those rooms made January, February, and March of this year.
Right.
So that's the main thing you're looking at is how can you push that idea?
Right.
If you can move occupancy by lowering rate, right? Like if you make all the hotel rooms $25, you'll be sold out.
Sure.
If you can raise rate and lower occupancy, just this basic sort of supply and demand stuff. You're trying to find that happy medium of we're filling enough rooms at the highest possible price, and that's what you're looking at RevPAR. It feels counterintuitive because you're like, well, it's good for rooms to be cheap, but it's not good because that's not bringing in the revenue, basically.
Now, let me ask you this then.
Sure.
Do you agree with or do you see the need for all these new hotels that have been propagated for the area and all these,
Yeah, it's in what I do personally, it's super helpful because everyone always asks what's new, right? Every journalist is like, so what's new? What's new in Tucson? What's new? And you're like, well, we're not a town that does new all that quickly. We move a little slower on that path. But when you just saw, even just last year before, when the AC Marriott opened downtown, it fundamentally changed downtown in that way. You bring more people to the space, and more people are spending. The AC Marriott outperforms sometimes on a room rate it outperforms JW Marriott Star Pass in its same class. So having something new in the right space makes a big difference. You're seeing so much in our peak season, which is middle of January through April. We're seeing such increases. There's going to be probably a flattening of the tourism business globally at some point. It's sort of inevitable. It goes in waves, but we still have a lot of space to take on more rooms. And for what, a lot of our organization does with group sales, with conventions, with these sort of large scale things, when we're busy, we could absolutely use more rooms. There were sort of basic hotels that were getting $600 a night during the gem show.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
well, that's the biggest puller, isn't it? But
for sure.
But now we've got these other sporting menus going on as well.
Yeah, it's made a big difference. I mean, you traditionally, Tucsonans, I think, you talk to them all the time and they're like, so, spring training, huh? And you're like, yes, that was a thing. It is not anymore.
No, right.
But you've seen a lot of major sporting events replacing that. The Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl has done wonders for a really soft part of tourism, the end of December, the beginning of January.
Right.
People, you think that it's a really great time for tourism, but there's no business. There's no group business. So having those rooms filled with bowl players for the bowl. There are the bands, the fans. All
Yeah,
that
the
stuff.
fans that come all over the place. And now, of course, the knuckle dusters, or the skull, what are they called?
Sugar skulls.
That'll
Yeah.
do, the sugar skulls, yes.
It just continues to bring in more people. And so
Right.
the one that people rarely know about, which is this, I think it's 12,000 rooms, Tucson Invitational Games, which is a series of tournaments and preseason exhibition games for colleges, small colleges and universities, mostly lower ends of NCAA and NAIA teams who come, baseball and softball teams that come from around the country because the weather is terrible. A lot of places everywhere else. They're looking for fields.
Right.
And it's 15,000 plus rooms filled with Beloit College in Wisconsin, their softball team. They just play schools that you're sometimes like, that is a school. That is absolutely a school that exists.
Just to see if it's university.
Yeah, right? it's somewhere. But they're playing at Keno Sports Complex, which is expanding, Lincoln Park, Golf Links Complex. So
Don't forget about the bicycle.
yeah, Tour to Tucson, which is going through its sort of revitalization.
Yeah.
And it's on for this year. Just if anybody's questioned whether the Tour is happening, it is happening.
So schedule your shopping trips around.
Yeah,
around
exactly.
that.
Great event. I rode in that once and may
I can't
never
get out
again.
of my house for a day.
But so it's all these sort of like, Tucson is very good at these maybe like more reasonably sized micro events. It lacks the splash of spring training, but things like Major League Soccer preseason has been here. We're doing exceptionally well with sports. We have an office, 2 people in that department in Tucson who only think about that. So it's kind of funny how these things all come together. Group sales is obviously a big deal. What we're doing in film is, same thing, right? You think of sports in the way you're like, man, I missed the big thing. And in film, you miss the film incentives and the large scale film. But people are plugging away with Netflix shows and non-scripted entertainment
right now. Yeah, the big stuff.
Independent stuff's
the
going
series
on.
Is, it started with Petrocelli, I think it was.
Yeah.
I mean, this town was for a long time a hub for ongoing television shows, but now the business has changed so much. The equipment's gotten so much smaller. Crews, the market's gotten so much broader. It's changed the industry.
So it's a shift.
How can a bank, I mean, Devin, the Great Western Bank is more for agribusiness and all the rest of it, but you also want all sorts of business, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, and I have a nice little team that they kind of have their own little niche. So what's fun?
Well, how would you tap into all of this that we're talking about? Tourism, people coming, visitors. You're in so many states, but you can transact business across the lines.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's just staying well informed within the tourism altogether. So, for instance, like getting into the hospitality business is, all these people run in the same circles, right? So we want to stay kind of relevant and in the eye, if you will, of those people who are looking to build on that tourism or benefit from it, Sure. So, when the Sugar Skulls, developed and started their season, we all wanted to be right there in the mix of it all,
Right.
whether it was, running concession stands or, tailgating, whatever it was.
Whatever it took?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, out at the 49ers, we run so many. Casey and his team are flat out all year with corporations having their golf days.
Yeah.
They're fun days.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they love that particular size of the course, and it's all the facilities are there. The amenities are there.
Well,
so Great Western Bank should be sponsoring something out there.
Oh,
It's almost like agriculture. They got a lot of grass out there.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The only downside is that I am a horrible golfer. So,
It
doesn't matter.
I'm a very normal athlete. I can do just about anything. You catch me out at Top Golf having a blast, doing just great. But when I got to pinpoint that, no, that's not.
Come on, we're going to play some real golf.
I'm kept
here,
away from the actual
not
tournament.
toy golf.
In banking, it might be better to be bad at it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, you guys are killing me out
Right?
here.
Oh, right. And they feel bad and they want to continue.
Yeah, exactly.
just to make it
Absolutely.
You can play army golf, that's not too bad. You haven't got too far to go with the 49ers, either side. What does Tucson's growth mean overall, then, to the Great Western Bank?
It puts us, for instance, my office is just north of campus, university campus, right? So we're 5 minutes from just about anything, So the growth of Tucson makes us more of an opportunity to help you with that growth. So when your small businesses want to become big businesses, your big businesses want to expand, you know, we want being in the mix of that and being for that, it helps us grow, you know. So it's the left hand helping the right hand. You know, you're not going to do it yourself. You know, whether you got cash flow capital that's going to allow you to do so, or you don't, and you're short on it, but you have asset wise. You know,
Right.
is the entrepreneurship and the growth that the business owners and that the community in general have and want to have. You know, Great Western Bank is loves that. You know, that we will fund just about anything you want. We want to see Tucson
Really?
grow. I said just about. But yeah, no, you know, and that's the thing is community comes first.
All right.
You can't build a bigger enterprise without starting with something smaller.
How do you come up against the community banks? I mean, the
larger banks?
No, come on, I got a mental block for a second. They're not the banks. The
Credit union?
Thank you. The credit unions.
You know, credit unions are a whole different.
Well, I shouldn't say
animal on
not
their
the
own.
banks. They are banks, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
In theory, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing is each person, each business owner, each human has their own different needs and wants, right? You know, I've had people ask me, what's the difference between you and a credit union? And I said, well, what does it mean to you? What does a credit union do for you? Oh, well, they hold my money. My direct deposit goes in there from work. My car loan is, well, so does Great Western Bank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have bank accounts, we have car loans, we have auto loans, we have mortgage loans. It's just a matter of what you need for you.
But I got to ask you this one, though, right? Because this was what they seem to push or stands to me. Your money stays here. I mean, I've even seen a particular ad lately I thought really got to the throat. I mean, it's like saying, you know, it's a war on out there to a degree. And this thing was saying, you know, hey, guess what? You give them your money. They've got your money. That's everybody else. But, you know, they own you. But guess what? With us, you own us.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does the money stay here? Where does it go? Does it go off to some fat guy with a cigar in a room in New York?
No, yeah, no, I know, and it's give and take with one of those things. You know, for us to give, in any institution, to give back to the people, give back to the people who help us be successful, is it has to be leveraged in some shape or form. So even at a credit union, the money you deposit is being held as an asset, if you will, or used to lend out for your mortgages, your auto loans, things of that nature. You know, and it's give and take. So say you got $100,000 that you put in a money market account and it's earning interest. Well, where does that interest come from? That comes from fee income and other expenses, other accounts that are on the lending side, if you will. You know, and that's a small portion of it, you know, but that's how you feed back and forth. So it's just give and take, and it's hard to kind of pinpoint. There's a lot of variables that go into that.
Right. Well, you're determined to get out there and offer just as much as anybody else is, aren't you?
You know, absolutely, and that's something that we pride ourselves on, as being a small bank where you get your personal service, but we can do anything that anybody else can do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What about you, Richard? Can you do anything anybody else can do?
You know, in terms of production, I would have said no about 10 years ago, but now with computerized editing and things like that,
Yeah.
probably yes.
Has it changed much, you know, in the industry production business?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really, really fortunate. When I started out, there really was no videotape or anything like that. And if you weren't doing something on television, there was no home video. There was, you know,
No.
there was really nothing. And how I stayed in business for those first 10 years, I have no idea. But the business has really migrated in our favor over the last decade or two. The internet has been a great boon for us. Before, if you weren't
Interesting.
doing something on television or for theatrical, there was really no outlet for what you were doing. Now, I mean, God, you do something, you put it online, and within 24 hours, it's viral, and 10 million people have seen it.
Right.
You know, whereas if you did something on television, you'd have to wait till it aired one time, and it's just...
Yeah, it makes me feel like when you look back at that, what you're saying, it's almost like we were in a time warp, wasn't it?
It really, yeah.
We were so hand-fed, and we had to wait.
Yep.
Had to wait.
Right.
And now it's like, boom, press a button,
Stream-
and everything
stream
you
it
want's
live.
right there.
Yeah.
Boom, you know.
It's funny because I was telling somebody the other day, I have a whole head full of useless knowledge. Because, you know, we started out in film, and you know, I know all about film stocks and
Right.
filtration and lighting and all that, and the color temperature. And now you can probably, the big thing is fixing it in post. You know,
Yeah.
you can mess up on location as long as you can fix it in editing.
Right, right.
But that gap is wider too between good and bad. You know, like there used to be sort of like a middle ground of like, well, some people are doing really great video or film, and then most of the stuff is pretty good.
Yep.
And now there's, you know, like you can see it where the same thing of like the problem with media is where everyone thinks they can do it. The problem with video is that everyone thinks they can do it.
Right.
And you see like ostensibly professional companies like doing something on their phone, and you're like, yes, you can, but that doesn't mean you should. There really is that space of like the professional has an opportunity there.
What amazes me in that industry is when they have a low budget and the thing makes billions. You know,
they used to say that you could give a monkey a typewriter, but he still couldn't write.
Right? Yeah.
And we love animals. What's the biggest challenge do you think that you've had to face or have faced in your business?
Cash flow really is the key to any business. And
I know a bank that could help you out there.
Right. No, the problem is you have to pay them back.
Yeah. Oh, that sort of bank.
There's that other half.
That's the part I'm not so happy with.
No, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's really cash flow has really been where it's at. At the end of the year, we got black ink, but getting there can be pretty problematic because the business is somewhat cyclical. And if somebody blows all their budget at the end of the year, there's probably nothing coming in the first quarter.
Right.
And so, there's still a lot of different avenues we can pursue. But I would say that's the biggest challenge. And keeping up with the technology. Right now it's gotten pretty level, but 4K is coming up. We're already set up for 4K, but they're not broadcasting a whole lot of it yet.
No.
So it's just, but. The good thing is that the equipment's gotten so much less expensive. We used to have to put $250,000 into one editing room.
That's right. It is a lot cheaper now, isn't it, to set up and so on? What about 5K? I'm not hearing or reading good things.
I'm not all that well versed on 5K. I'm still trying to figure out 4K.
Yeah, fair enough too. By the way, what is 4K? All right. You've been at it 50 years now, right? Any plans for retirement?
What I'm trying to do is the 4-day weekend and the 3-day work week.
All right.
I really enjoy what I do. My son, Paul, is...
I read that in a book somewhere. The 4-day work week and a 3-day weekend.
No, other way around.
Does it exist?
Other way around.
Oh, the other way around.
He tried to take it away from
weekend, 3-day work week. Well, my son, Paul, is taking a leadership role in the company, and he is a much better businessman than I am. I'm an old hippie, I'm all mush on the inside. Paul really knows about business, and he's really, really creative and very good at what he does. So, I'm trying to get out of his way and still have something to do with my life. So I play so much golf, right?
I think, in your world and what you've done and been involved with, it's like me. I mean, I retired this stint in Tucson. Now I live here 6 years, but I couldn't stay retired, No. When you've been in the media, I think, most of your life, it's very hard to do nothing and just play golf every day.
It really is.
And I like to give back too, and when I worked at the commercial station, I was doing a morning talk back, but I was working, 14 hours a day. And that's something I found I couldn't take at my age now.
No.
So with this is I can have a weekend or 3-day if I want, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, you really gotta keep moving forward.
You do. I think you do. And I think people that don't do anything and stop dead are the ones that fall dead, quite frankly.
My dad, he retired.
Did he really?
He retired from life at the same time. He lasted about 10 years, and that was it.
Wow. There you go.
My grandfather's retired, I think, 3 times.
Yeah.
And
you know how much talent, when you hear about these shows where they can't get workers, this and that, and you think about all the guys that have retired and the years of knowledge they have, and no one wants them.
Well,
they're too old.
It's the same thing we're facing with the base. We have people coming out of the base with incredible skills for this town.
Right. Yeah.
And they have to go somewhere else. It's really changing now.
Right.
The chamber.
Yes, the Metro Chamber,
Really, really working to make sure that we don't get that brain drain anymore.
Yeah. Yep, they'll have to. So, in closing with you, Richard, what would you say is the thing you're most proud of?
Oh, I'd have to say my kids.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. And the fact that I've survived 50 years in business. I'm surprised that they turned out as well considering their parentage.
Right.
But yeah.
Now, you got three children, right?
I have 2 sons and a stepson, yep.
2 sons and a stepson, okay. Yep. And what are they doing? What's their individual lives?
Well, Paul, as I said, is working with me. My son, Derek, is a high-end executive up in Boise, Idaho, with a company called Aero Specialties, travels to places I can't even spell, selling ground support equipment for aircraft.
Okay,
and he's done very, very well for himself. And my stepson, Tristan, is a very bright kid. He's going to be a writer, I think.
Good on him. Good on him.
Hell of a good cook, too.
And do you do things like whatever you do, don't follow in your old man's footsteps? Whatever.
No, do better than me, please.
Yeah.
Richard Rose, he's the president, CEO of Film Creations here in Tucson. Been here since Methuselah and has done wonderful work. And how would you like people to find you, buddy? Is it still www.filmcreations.com?
It is.
That's the best way?
Yep.
All right. And what about all this Twitter and all the others? We don't worry about that?
I'm probably...
Tweet
last person in the world that's not on Facebook or Twitter, but
You might be better off.
keeps
You're
me
almost
posted.
certainly better off.
And Paul knows but Paul's up to speed on that.
That's fantastic.
I'm a fossil.
He might be doing it without you even knowing at this
Oh, I
point.
know
right?
he is. I know he is. But I don't know what it is he's doing.
Uh-oh.
Devin, I'd like to ask you, Devin Brown from the Great Western Bank. Why was it called the Great Western Bank?
You know, is the only thing I can come up with is that's where they wanted to move. If you think about it, going to the Midwest, you know, moving out further west,
Right.
you start you get a different perspective. You start getting a different culture as you move that way. You know, everybody's got their own reason for their own name. So
Yeah, fair enough, because there's a lot in a
Great
name.
bank in the Southwest.
there
right?
you go.
There you go. That's what it was.
Progress.
Way out west.
Yeah.
If you were to answer this one sentence, Devin,
Okay.
how have you been successful over the years that you've been in this industry? What has set you apart?
You know, my wife may disagree, but listening. You have to listen to the people around you, both from a consumer standpoint and a colleague standpoint. You can't do everything. As much as, you know, again, my wife says that I think I know everything and I'm right all the time. That's certainly not the case, but you have to be able to listen to everybody who's around you. You'll pick up cues. You'll educate yourself. You'll find a new way to do things, as long as you keep your ears open. You know.
And what about business growth for you and the bank in the next 5 to 10 years? What do you forecast?
You know, it's going to be a slow, but and I don't want to say slow as in, you know, we're taking our time trickling, you know, a trickling stream, but it's going to be a well developed, slow, consistent process. Right, is you're not going to see dramatic highs or dramatic lows. It's going to be a steady incline.
Okay. Well, that would probably suit your investors anyway.
Absolutely, yeah,
Wouldn't it?
yeah. Keeps me coming in the office and my name on the door. I'm all right.
And what advice can you give to up-and-coming businesses or businesses that perhaps listening to the show that they're looking to make a leap forward?
I'd say, you know, make sure you have your arms stretched out far enough. You know, by that I mean have your resources. Know who you can talk to. Know who you can go to for that advice, and you know, make a conscious decision that you want to be proactive in expanding your business. You know, and if you're on the fence about it, figure out why you're on the fence. Because if you're not fully committed, you're not going to be successful, in my opinion.
Well, that's fair enough. I don't think you could beat that. And as far as the listeners are concerned, to connect to you, which way would you like? Well, what is the best way for them to contact you?
You can walk in the door. Come say hi to me.
That's interesting.
I'll take you to lunch. You know, we'll have a nice little conversation.
Did you hear that?
Free lunch. Wow.
Right, there you go.
Tell you what.
Yeah, I mean, you can always call the office. You know, is got a great team, always answers the phone. If they don't answer by the second ring, it's because we're running around like our chickens with our head cut off. But
All
you know,
right.
we're still getting things done.
Then the robot answers.
No, we don't have robots. I told you that.
Welcome
No.
to the Great Western Bank.
There you go.
GreatWesternBank.com, and the LinkedIn URL is linkedin.com-in-devon-brown, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You'll find them all there.
Absolutely.
But again, I just go to the website. I would do that. Well, last but not least, the voice. This man, you can hear him coming, well and truly. He has done a lot of things. He's lived life. He's been a contestant. He's won a lot of money. He's lost a lot of money. He's been a
What?
baker.
Wait a minute. Where was that part? I missed that part.
He's been up and down. Dan.
True.
Dan Gibson is the Director of Communications for Visit Tucson. Now, if anybody is a young, aspiring, budding, wanting to be PR consultant, communications director, what's the biggest advice you'd give them? Seriously, Dan.
Well, I think what's been good in my profession, and I think it translates to most things, is really trying to figure out how to tell a story is the main thing. And I think people disregard the sort of power that narrative has in our lives, in people wanting something that has a beginning and a middle and an end, that has adversity, that has triumph, that has a line to it. And, you know, when you're talking about a city, when you're talking about a place, people want to understand where the struggles, the things that have been, they want something that's authentic, that's real. And I think that carries over to most professions. I think, you know, when you're talking about film, when you're talking about people's arc with their investments and their stories, like how do you realize where you're wanting to go and what it means for you to get there? That's that's what was great for me in journalism. It's what's great in PR is to say somebody like Don Guerra down the street at Barrio Bakery. Why did he get into this business? Why is he passionate about local grains? Why is he doing what he's doing? And how that got him to a James Beard nomination, which is like functionally the Oscars of food. That's what's been successful for us, is like connecting those really personal narratives. A place can have attractions and parks and the things to think, but people want to feel connected to a sense of place that's usually the people. People love Tucson because Tucson kind of welcomes them back.
You have a personality here. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think for anybody, when I talk to my son, I talk to my daughter, it's just like, learn to tell a story. Like, just learn to think about where's the hook in this that attracts somebody to what's happening. And I think you see that in this business as well, right? It's such a cliche, but it really is about people and where they've been and where they're going.
Well, thank you, Dan.
Of course.
It's been a fabulous show. Dan Gibson, the Director of Communications for Visit Tucson. And, of course, you'll be able to contact any of these gentlemen. Once you get to the site, when the show is finished, it'll be put up with all their details and a bio and so on, and photograph and all their contacts. And that stays there forever on the Business Radio Network. And by all means, it's Tucson's Means Business. And our other guest was Devin Brown, Branch Manager of the Great Western Bank. You'll probably hear a lot more about them in time. Or it'll be, who were they? Weren't they here for 5 minutes? I'm not sure.
Not at all. Not at all.
They'll be around a long time. And the guy that has been here 50 years, Richard Rose, and Film Creations Limited is the name of his company. I thank you all, gentlemen. It's been a great show. Appreciate it. Coming to you live on the Business Radio Network from the Stewart Title Studio in their corporate offices on Broadway in Tucson, and proudly sponsored by the 49ers Golf and Country Club.